So I'm Bruce Harlan, Executive Director for Women's Services here in Crawford County. So throughout the rest of the 70s and then into the early 80s, we were primarily focused on women and children who were homeless for lots of reasons. Maybe they lost their job, maybe they were evicted because they couldn't make the rent payment. We opened our doors, and I believe the very first shelter guest was an elderly woman who walked a mile in a snowstorm to get to the doors of what we were then calling the greenhouse. But in the 80s, at the same time, what was happening across the state was similarly a group of women getting together and talking about domestic and sexual violence. And in 1975, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape began, and in 1976, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence began.
My name is Connie Graham. I'm a prevention education specialist, and I specialize in working with people who have disabilities. So I work a lot with people who have intellectual disabilities or autism. We're working really hard on a grant project that's 4 years for a curriculum that we're writing for adults with disabilities about healthy relationships and abuse awareness, abuse prevention, and incorporating sex ed topics in that curriculum. Those students are pulled out of health classes when they talk about, reproduction and birth control and STDs and those kinds of things, which is a real shame. They're disproportionately at risk, but then they don't receive that information. Hopefully we can decrease abuse in our community.
I'm Chanel McPherson. I'm the housing coordinator here.
And I'm Brenda Adams. I work the hotline. Working hotline it's not for everyone.
That's true.
So I think any of the calls when we get a lethality, which is when the police have identified a woman as needing our assistance, she's like in a domestic situation, those are always memorable in the sense that you've got someone who's immediately in need. Not all our calls come in that way. It's sometimes just someone who's in a homeless situation, whereas that's obviously a crisis, I'm sure, for them too, but it's not a domestic situation. We have both types of guests that we help here.
So I helped two ladies on separate occasions cross opposite side of the country. One to come back to Meadville, the other to go to, I think, Nevada or somewhere out west. So that was interesting. We have this big book of shelters from '07 that really needs to be replaced. But it has a list of all the shelters in all the states and what they provide. So I had to utilize that and Google to try and get them into either shelters or shelters that can give them hotels. Homeless need help with rental assistance, back utilities, everything.
It's all ages, all walks of life.
Income levels.
Yeah. Yep. We're filled to capacity usually all the time. And we're just a small shelter, though. There's only 5 rooms.
I think our last guest from January, we had to take a bed from another room to put in there.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know how they survived in there. That was wild. It gets overwhelming when you have such a large family needing help, but you have such a small space.
Right.
And hotels are just not much better either, and it's expensive.
My name is Meg Lenher, and I am the head therapist here at Women's Services. Trainings around intimate partner violence, domestic violence, stalking, human trafficking, all of those things we've done. Programming through all of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is April, Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October. We've done all kinds of programs for that. I had no idea that this was even a specific type of counseling and therapy that anybody really did. I didn't know this type of agency existed. But once I got involved, I thought, this is so cool, because I'm a survivor myself. And I saw what you can do for survivors and the difference that it makes. One of my first cases, and it was while I was still an intern actually, was a 3-year-old boy. And it was a really intense case. He'd been so severely abused that he was nonverbal. And through our time working together, he he would speak enough to tell a little bit about what had happened. So I was able to kind of determine what he had been through, which was great. I mean, that's a portion of therapy. But what's more important is teaching people how to express their emotions and cope with their emotions and come out of those trauma responses. We work together to express feelings through colors. And mind you, this little boy was in such a state of trauma responses that he would lash out in school, he would bash his head off walls and tables, he would bite people, he would scream, he would lay in the floor and just throw tantrums. So through our therapy together, he started to be able to say to people like, you know, "Mommy, my heart feels red," and that was him saying, "I'm angry." Or he would go to his teacher and say, "My heart feels blue," which meant that he was feeling sad, or "My heart feels purple," which meant scared. And so he was able to begin communicating, and so he wasn't acting out as much anymore. I got an older gentleman who came in under a pseudonym. He confided his trauma for the first time in 70 years. It was crazy, and he cried, and I just, the vulnerability that he expressed as an older gentleman was really impressive. There are, and there will always be people who will care and who will listen and who will help if you can just step forward.